People living our lives. We're people, just people, and we're glad to be alive.
Welcome to We're People First, the Jeff Moyer Show.
I don't think so. Go. Hello, everyone. We're so glad you're here with us today. As you can see, we are ready for the 4th of July, and we are sitting in Jeff's studio, surrounded by several of his favorite instruments, and he's ready to play a song in a minute. But
for those of you who are of the non-visual persuasion, we are dressed in red, white, and blue, and always in red glasses.
Always, yes. And my gosh, since we were together before Father's Day, things have happened. We went through the solstice, so happy summer, everybody.
Happy summer, everybody, yeah.
And hope I know some people are in a lot of heat, and there's wildfires, and our prayers are going to help those folks that are suffering that way. Now, a few things before we get on to this show is one thing that we did not get to air last show.
Was not time.
Yes, we ran out of time, and Fletch Russell was our guest, and he's the wonderful father, grandfather, artist. He's a sculptor and a photographer, and he's
master caregiver.
Yes, absolutely. And after all that he shared, he wanted you to know this. This is a quote from Fletch Russell. He says, "The organization and coordination of doctors' visits, ambulance trips, special education services, teaching, doing all of the cooking, shopping, and general maintenance was a juggling act that required teamwork, communication, collaboration, assistive technology, advocacy, a positive attitude, and a level of patience that can only be defined as love." And
I've heard love described as patience. I think those words really are interchangeable.
For Corinthians, yes, it says that.
Oh,
love is patience.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so that was something that I wanted to be sure to share with you. And Jeff, tell us a little bit about today's show.
Today is all about advocacy, and advocacy is a broad topic. It's hard to talk with this harmonica brace on my jaw.
Oh, you want me to hold it?
No, I've got to move it down a little bit to speak much. There, advocacy is it's about speaking up for yourself, and in all human relationships, there are times when you need to advocate for yourself. Whether it's parent-child, child-parent, husband-wife, boyfriend-girlfriend, boyfriend-boyfriend, girlfriend-girlfriend. All relationships rely on people getting their needs met, and often that means speaking up for yourself, making sure that you do. So advocacy is the most fundamental of human communications, but it happens at a fundamental level that way. It also happens, as we'll talk about, advocating for yourself if you have a disability to get your needs met, and advocating for your group, and advocating for others.
Yes.
That's probably the most, I suppose, the most difficult, when there's no immediate self-interest other than justice. But I want to play a song to open the show that I wrote when I began to work as a public figure, using music to communicate matters of consequence concerning disability rights. I wanted to write a song that really spoke about what's the core issue that anybody who lives with a devalued difference, and that's not just disability, but any difference that's devalued, be it sexual orientation or race or the amount of money you have in the bank or where you live or what your job is. Anytime you're devalued by others, then comes the question, how do they see you? And that's what this song questions. Do you see me as an equal?
All right, I'm going to get out of the screen there so
Okay,
you can.
swing that
I will swing the
microphone
microphone down to your guitar.
Here we go. Do you see me as an equal? In your eyes do I unfold? Do you see me for the person that I am? Do you see me as an equal? Free of labels, names and signs. I'm living well and whole here in my plan. They say don't judge the books just by their covers. How can we do less by sisters and brothers? For we are truly equal, one people, just the same. Let's love each other as we are, living on this plane. Now did you know that human difference is the way we're meant to be? But only when we know that are we whole. For our differences make us stronger, each with our abilities. And together we comprise one family whole. They say don't judge the books just by their covers. How can we do less by sisters and brothers? For we are truly equal, one spirit, just the same. Let's see each other as we are, living on this plane. Well, it's true here in me and there in you. Just behind what we can see, what we can do. Together we can truly be known for our humanity. Living, loving, laughing, being free. Now we share this tiny planet home as one great family. Though different as the fishes of the sea. But when blinded by appearance, we disable those we see. But we handicap our own humanity. Let's see each other as we are, know each other as we are, love each other as we are, living on this plane. And then we'll all be whole once again. Then we'll all be whole once again.
Well, great, Jeff. Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left before our guest comes. So tell us again some of the things that we talked about earlier, getting ready for the show.
I will. Just a second. Let me take this guitar off.
Okay, I'll help you do that.
Good. Want to grab it from me?
I will. There we go.
Christy is the most overqualified roadie in California. 3 master's degrees and she's schlepping instruments. Well, one of the things I was talking to Christy about was Christy's education led her to begin teaching special education in the year 1961?
No, that was my second year of teaching. 63.
In 63. Disability rights law concerning education didn't begin until 1973 with 504, and then IDEA, which was originally called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, in 1975. And the question I asked you, honey, was what was it like for you before there were individual educational plans? What was your classroom like?
Well, actually, when I got into the field of special education, I had had 3 years experience in regular education.
Uh-huh.
And I was in Ohio. Ohio needed special ed teachers. And so we started right to college on a master's level learning those skills. And so I always had in my classroom IEPs. That was something that came along with that whole movement. But when
before there were
we didn't have special ed classes before that. There were not. As you know, Mark didn't have your brother.
My brother, Mark.
Right.
No, he wasn't allowed in school.
No.
You should turn off that fan.
Yes, I'll do that. So it was all new.
But when you started teaching, you had a classroom that was only kids with disabilities.
Correct.
There was no inclusion.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, that was not.
Everybody was crammed in the same class. And it was up to you to figure out how to teach 30 kids with highly individualized needs.
No, there weren't 30 children in my first classroom. There were 10.
Okay.
But it was an age range from 6 years to 9 years old. So you had this wide range of age and needs. And what they did was the 6 to 9 year olds was one group, and then 10 to 12 another group, 13 to 15 another group, and then the last high school level kids, hopefully they got into what they called a work study program. And so it eased them into jobs in the community.
But the individualized education plan then, when that happened, what happened for you as a teacher?
Well, it was a kind of, building the plane as you fly it. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of guidance on what to do. And we just kind of, bumbled along for a while, and it got more and more complicated. Then when I left Ohio, it was way different, and every state was different, which was kind of interesting because in Ohio, as you know, where you're from also, there's a strong parent advocacy component. Mm-hmm. When I got to California, and that was in 1988, that was not here. I don't know why the parents here didn't seem to have the tools or the information needed to advocate.
It's always one spark plug in a community that starts a program, starts advocating, starts a process. 1 minute
between our guests before our guest comes.
Okay. Well, we have so much to say about advocacy, but this is really a good place to start. That time before we had the laws that protect us in our civil rights. And it should be noted that all disability rights legislation, the Americans with Disabilities Act, Fair Housing Act amendments, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Section 504 of the Rehab Act, all have two things in common. One, individualized plans, and two, inclusive settings. So integrating people with disabilities into the mainstream has been one of the hallmarks of the way that we have done disability rights in the United States. And of course, we're celebrating today also the advocacy effort of those men and women who put their lives on the line to be revolutionary champions to break away from England to create the United States of America.
Freedom.
And with that note, we're going to take a segue here and come back with our guest, the great Holland De Lille. Okay, Holland.
Guest interview.
Hey, let me introduce a woman that in many circles needs no introduction. Holland De Lille is one of the great champions of disability rights concerning the California Building Code. And she was also the woman who documented for time in memoriam the 504 demonstration. through her photographic essay, which is now in a fabulous book which is displayed behind her called Becoming Real in 24 Days. Holland, what was your first advocacy effort? And there will be an image of the woman you're about to speak of with the photographs that will be displayed momentarily. But tell us about your first advocacy effort.
First, I have to say, your introduction is so well put. Jeff, thank you. You say so much with so few words. Thank you.
Thank you.
For that credit.
Now move in a little closer to the microphone.
You want me to?
Yeah, you're a little muddy.
Is this better?
Yes.
It is better, yeah.
Okay, great. So, I started becoming an advocate for people with disabilities in about 1975 when I lived in the small town of Sonoma. And one of the people that jumped into our little committee, we called ourselves the Environmental Access Committee for the Handicapped, giving us an acronym of EACH. And our motto was a way for each. And at that time, it was okay to use the word handicap. And who jumped in with us to help but Maya Angelou. So we had Maya Angelou going to meetings and getting news coverage and helping us demonstrate for accessibility. Basically, we were focused on being able to get into all the buildings that everybody else could get into, like City Hall. I was photographed and put in the paper paying a fine outside of City Hall because I couldn't get into City Hall. City Hall had to come to me so I could pay a fine for my dog.
I had to do that, yeah.
So
not for your dog. I had to pay a fine for my own dog. Fortunately, I wasn't fined for your dog.
right.
So it began with, now Maya Angelou lived in Sonoma?
Yes, she did.
Interesting.
For a short time. We were very proud of that fact.
Now we're going to be showing some photographs from your wonderful book. Technically, what happens is the images are going to take the full computer screen or television screen, because 75% of viewers, we know last time we had over 6,000 viewers. Most of you watch on small screen devices. So if we were to squeeze that photograph down to a part of the screen, you wouldn't be able to tell what it was or not see it with its clarity. Unfortunately, what that's going to do is during the projection of the images, ASL Kira Beck's fabulous interpreting will not be visible. But if you watch the show 24 hours after we air it, then you'll have the open captioning. I know it's called closed captioning, but it's not. It's open captioning because everyone gets it. It's open. Closed captioning means you have to have a special box to get it. Anyway, so be advised, those of you who are relying on Kira's signing, that if you watch the show again within 24 hours after we air, you'll get the open captioning, and that will help you while you won't be able to see Ms. Beck's fabulous signing. Okay, back to you, Holland.
So you want to know how my advocacy proceeded from then?
Yes, what happened next?
Well, I was raised by abusive alcoholics, so I have very, very low self-esteem. And somebody told me I had, on April 5th, 1977, I had to go to a demonstration in front of the Federal Building in San Francisco. And it totally changed my life. It fell on me like a bomb because the speakers and everybody was talking about rights and equality. So I got the message that I am equal and I have rights. I couldn't leave. I had to go home that evening, but I came back the next day and the next day and the next day with my children because I could not stay away from the demonstration. And I must not have been alone. By the fourth day we came back, 150 people had stayed overnight in the Federal Building. They couldn't go home either. And it was such a remarkable change personally, and then of course in the community, that we stayed there for 3.5 weeks in the federal building. And on the fourth day, I did come back with my children, and the guards would not let me in because so many people had slept overnight there. So I went home, borrowed a camera from a professional photographer who was a friend of mine, a beautiful old Nikon. Went back the next day without the children, and the guards let me in because I told them I was press and I had this fancy camera.
You were pressed.
I was press, and so I ended up taking over 300 photographs of the demonstrators and people now how they lived inside, and then a group of about 20 went back to Washington D.C. to carry on the battle there. We met with several Congress people, and we met with senators, and we had a meeting in the White House office also, and all of this is documented in my book. And so, as I said, I took over 300 photographs because it was, and I kept all the documents, all the news clippings, everything, because it was such a profound change in my life. And then in 2015 or 14, actually, we were coming upon the anniversary of the ADA, and I realized people didn't know about the 504 demonstrations. That was the first advocacy, one of the first federal advocacy efforts that we made as a community.
Yes.
And we made it, yes, and we made it because it was the first law that protected our rights. And it started at the federal level. It said, if you receive any federal dollars, you cannot discriminate against people with disabilities. And hopefully that was happening throughout the state, receiving state dollars. And it took, though, until now that started in like 1977, but it took until 1990 when the ADA was signed by President Carter. No, not by President Carter.
No, the first H.R. Bush. Yeah.
Yeah, the first Bush, President Bush.
Sorry, George H.R. Bush.
Yeah.
Okay, President Bush. So, and it was the first time that we were protected elsewhere other than anybody that receives federal or state dollars. The ADA brought access to us if you just provided anything for the public, all public accommodations. And it wasn't until 1990 that we got to go to restaurants and movie theaters and anywhere else that other people can go. We weren't able to go until 1990. The law was changed, and of course it took many years to get the law implemented.
Well, that of course is what we're talking about here, Holland, is it doesn't matter what the law is, whether it's the Civil Rights Act or, my God, the Voting Rights Act, how it's been decimated. But all laws require advocacy for the individual to get their needs met. Typically, you have to bring pressure to bear because power is not going to be given to you without complaint.
No, they would fight it. And I always worked in the area of architectural accessibility, access to the built environment. And I worked on that for decades in California, and got the first, as you said, the first access standards in the California Building Code around 1980. And then after that, it was implementation and working with building departments and say, hey guys, you've got a job to do. When a plan comes across your desk, you got to make sure it complies with the California Building Code requiring accessibility. And that was a huge task that went on forever. And we're still fighting it, but they've gotten better. We have to say that they have gotten better.
I remember discussions back before the 504 demonstration about priorities when we were talking in cross-disability discussion. And it was agreed that because people who used wheelchairs for mobility couldn't get into buildings with stairs, getting into the building had to be the first priority. And unfortunately, other aspects of access, for example, signage and information access, has not followed suit. But my Lord, we've made you, I should say, have made such tremendous strides. What the 504 demonstration did was bring cross-disability advocacy to bear. But after that, in your efforts, Holland, Are you working with cross-disability groups, or is it primarily people with physical disabilities?
It was people with hearing impairments, people with visual impairments, and people with mobility impairment, and people also with cognitive impairments. After the 504 demonstration, Ed Roberts who was appointed, was the first person with a disability ever appointed as the director of the California Department of Rehabilitation, put me to work creating a community organization called the Community Access Network. And through them, we worked in getting building departments to implement the state laws for accessibility. Plus, also through them, even though I wasn't supposed to, we used this huge organization throughout the state to put pressure on the California Building Standards Commission to adopt the first state standards for accessibility. And that's another whole drama that was a lot of fun as it played out. We had a couple of real advocates on the commission, Ray Leonardini and Bill Hasty, and they kept all the commissioners there until 11 o'clock that night. Before they'd let them go home, they had to pass and approve the first access standards in California.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we will be doing a show on Ed Roberts probably next January when it comes around to Ed Roberts Day on January 23rd. But we'll talk about him in depth then. But Ed was a pioneer that did so much to advance the cause of disability rights. And as Holland said, thanks to Ed, she became head of the California Access Network. Remarkable. That's remarkable.
I have to put in one little plug. Ed turned me loose, and I was a low analyst.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Ed turned you loose?
Oh, Ed turned you loose.
I was a low analyst in the state bureaucracy. That's pretty low.
Uh-huh.
And I went to the state architect. I went to the legislature. I went to the head of the Parks Department. I went everywhere. I picked up the phone and I called straight. And of course, that's not what you're supposed to do with the lowly analyst position.
Oh, well.
What's the old expression? Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Exactly.
Well, when the new governor came in, Wilson became governor, and Ed was no longer the director of the Department of Rehabilitation, the manager of my office called me in and said, "You will never go back to the legislature. You will never go back to the state architect's office until you get permission from me, and I have to get permission from my manager." So I was quickly caged and put in my place. It was too late. We got the job done. It was too late.
But little did they know that this would be a lifelong undertaking for you.
Absolutely.
Holland, how can people get your book?
Well, I have a website. Just go online. Just type in "Becoming Real in 24 Days," and you can get right to it. It's also on Amazon, "Becoming Real in 24 Days." And thank you for asking.
I would also say that Holland's images that Holland collected so religiously and so effectively, you became a professional photographer if you weren't before. But that book, the images from that book are included in Crip Camp, which is up for an Academy Award. And Holland's work has been featured in the New York Times and the Boston Globe, and I'm sure we could go on at length. But we, unfortunately, have to wrap it, Holland. Your images, as we've been talking, have been slowly brought in and out, and you've gotten just a taste of the fabulous images that Holland captured candlelight vigil at the White House, and that first day when it was me, the blind guy with the bullhorn, leading the chants before we went into the building. And Holland in Washington, right?
Right.
Image of you?
From President Carter's First Baptist Church.
Right.
The vigil with Judy Newman and Bruce Curtis next to me.
Go ahead.
The
So
teachers who supported us, the International Association of Machinists, grabbed the camera from me and said, "We got to get a picture of you to prove you were here." They're the ones that took the photograph.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, this is an example of what I get as far as being brought into Jeff's circle of so many great friends. And so I got to meet Holland about, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago. And do you still have your Airbnb, Holland?
I do.
I think that's wonderful. So know that as a side that
anyone looking for a wonderful place to stay in, what town are you in?
Grayton. Graton, Grayton.
Go ahead.
It's called Lille's Garden Place, and the garden this year is just outstanding.
Oh, that's great. On your website, do you have pictures of that?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Okay.
So check out Holland De Lille, HOLLYNN, D''Lil. Holland is the great champion of California physical access, and I get alerts from her from time to time that I respond to, and she is the voice of a network that is making things happen through advocacy. And just because there's a law doesn't mean that things will change. It takes the individual engaging to create civic change through
There are so many great advocates throughout California.
Yeah.
Doing amazing work.
Well, I'm glad we were able to grab some of your time. As far as I'm concerned, the greatest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and honor, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, Helen, we were very excited to have you on the show, and we're looking forward to anyone who's watching the show. Make comments, send us your thoughts. We want to hear from you.
Right.
But I know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say, and Holland's images that we shared today have shared thousands of words and ideas about what we did way back then.
Well, we hope to see you soon, Holland, when we get on the road. And thanks again for being with us today.
Thank you. Do I just exit? Do I push a button? What do I do?
You unzoom, however you
unzoom.
Do that. I don't know.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
You bet. Bye-bye.
People First Consciousness.
Okay, I think we're ready now to go on to People First Consciousness, Jeff.
Well, I do want to talk a bit about advocacy and how it's done and what it means. Advocacy at the most fundamental level is saying, I have a need that is unmet, and I have an idea about how it could be met. And toward that end, I want to read a section from my book called A Valid Test. Before there were such things as IDEA and Section 504 that ensure that children in schools get their educational needs met, students like me, way back in the 60s, had to really struggle. For example, if I was taking a test and I couldn't see fast enough to complete the test, any questions I didn't get time to answer were marked wrong. And it made quite a difference in my education. So here is my first advocacy effort. From Grit, my memoir, A Valid Test, a story of my first serious advocacy effort as a senior in high school, seeking a test that would test my knowledge, not my ability to see. The story picks up during my taking of the PSAT. I knew for certain that the empty 1/3 of the test boxes would all be scored as wrong answers. My eyes burned and my neck ached from bending face down to the table to read. I walked away from the PSAT test with a heavy heart and squinted as I wandered out into the brilliance and ocular pain of a Saturday midday. I walked slowly home and thought about the test and its impact on my chances of getting into college. The scores came back, and I was in the 49th percentile in math and 46th in English. I read my scores, and I stung with the bitter injustice of the situation. I felt frustrated, blocked, and the very real pressure of the necessity to find a way to demonstrate my too scholastic stuff. This was just the ramp up to the SATs, the big-time testing ordeal. It was the bellwether all colleges and universities scrutinized as a true measure of an applicant's academic mettle. I decided to talk to Brush High School's college counselor. Miss Kingzett was an intelligent, unsmiling, short, gray-haired woman with absolute power of the pen concerning college application recommendations. Through her secretary, I made an appointment and then tensely sat before her and showed her my test scores. I demonstrated how I had to read with my face flat on the desk, eye pressed up against the thick glass of my dome magnifier, and explained how difficult and slow it had been for me to read the test booklet and to mark the new computer-read answer sheet with its devilishly faint light blue boxes. I told Miss Kingzett how unfair I thought the testing process had been for me. I implored her to help me find an accommodation that might give me an even chance with the dreaded but required upcoming SAT test. Miss Kingzett grimly read from my open folder on her desk, considered my PSAT scores, and then my overall Midland academic record. "You're an average student, and your PSAT score is average," she intoned with a flat finality. "Why would you expect to do any better on the test than this?" I argued that because of my partial blindness, I had lost 90% of vision in one eye and 95% in the other, and my complete lack of accommodations, I had not had an even playing field in classes. If I didn't finish a timed test, all unanswered questions were marked wrong. My vision had been tested, not my knowledge. She stared, silent and unmoved. I pressed forward without any encouragement. I asked if there weren't some sort of special test arrangement for legally blind students. She was still silent. I continued pleading. I asked if the test couldn't be read to me. Finally, with begrudging resignation, she looked away and told me there was a large print test that could be specially ordered that also allowed for extended time. I was thrilled and nearly jumped up with the news, which she had clearly been withholding. I eagerly asked her if she would please order the test. She wasn't happy about it, but she did agree to order the special edition test. When the SAT test was scheduled, I didn't file into the cafeteria with the other students. When my large print version arrived, testing days were arranged. I was excused from classes over a period of 2 full days. I sat in an inner administrative office and, still reading through my thick optical aid, face flush on the desk, took the large print test. Not only could I read the test booklet, but there also was an easy-to-fill-in large print answer sheet. This time, unlike the PSAT, I was able to read and answer all the test questions. When the scores came back, I had received a 687 or 90th percentile in math and a 593 or 96th percentile in English. I felt vindicated and proud. The day I got my scores, I waited, after lunch, in Miss Kingzett's outer office, with my results in hand. When I was called in, I handed her my test results, and she studied them. Remembering her admonishment about my ranking as an average student and my average test scores, I asked her if she'd ever seen a student score higher on the SAT than their academic capability. After a long moment of silence, she said no. I told her that I was capable of much better work than I'd been able to accomplish and that I could succeed in college if I only had the assistance I needed. I took the opportunity to tell her that I wanted to attend Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, a bastion of liberal thought and social action. She said she would consider endorsing my application, depending on my grades at semester's end. She reminded me that Antioch required a 3.0 GPA. I knew that my midterm grades had to shine. I left her office feeling quietly victorious. It took me 6 years and 3 schools to complete my lower division college work, but I had high grades throughout. They got me into the University of California at Berkeley, which had the nation's first disabled students program. As a result, I was able to read using my recorded tapes in the blind student study and take tests with a reader. I graduated Phi Beta Kappa and received the School of Social Work's Departmental Citation for Excellence in scholarship and service. I wish I might have shared those accomplishments with Myth King Zet. So advocating for oneself is challenging. It's frightening. It requires knowing what you're doing. And I've talked to so many parents about advocating for their children in IEP meetings.
Great.
And do you know what I have been told? That when they go in with an attorney or with an advocate who knows the law, they're often seen as troublemakers. They're seen as malcontents. And I've been told, you know, it was me and my advocate, and there were 28 people from the school district facing us.
Yes. That happens very, very frequently. Absolutely. And when you're a teacher of special education, you're advocating all the time, because the money that's sent from the state and the federal that's earmarked for special education is very loosely, it comes into the general fund of each school district. And so the administration has their choice of where they really want to spend that money. And so many classrooms that I taught in had no books, nothing.
No books.
No books.
Oh my God, it's
And
like an inner city,
it was-
third world school, like
Right.
what we read about concerning before equal rights in education for minority students.
And then as a teacher, when you're an advocate for your students, some administrators aren't very happy with you. You know, you're considered a thorn in their side. They want you just to go in your classroom, close the door, and don't bother us, that kind of thing. And every once in a while, you'll have a great administrator, and then you can really do a good job. But for the most part, the teachers are the person that, during the school day anyway, are advocating for the kids.
So for those of you who are disability rights advocates or parents, think about it, that we often think about the parent advocating for the child against the school district. What my wonderful wife Christy is telling us is that it is the teacher of special education who is the advocate for the student, pulling down the money that's needed, arguing for what academic supplies are even needed to teach. Correct?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Now, I haven't been in the classroom for 10 years, but I don't think things have changed much. And coming out of the COVID pandemic, I'm afraid that it's going to be a really tough road, because from what I'm reading in journals, the kids that were the special needs kids, they didn't have access to Wi-Fi, and they couldn't do a lot of the online learning that the kids that were in regular education had. Either they couldn't access it, or it wasn't working for them to be at home and online that way.
The majority of kids with disabilities are from families who are on the downside of the economic terrain.
Okay, so we're going to
break and
move into Instrument Corner.
Oh boy, my favorite segment. No, it's not. They're all my favorite segment.
Where's your
Instrument Corner.
inside your desk? Okay, Jeff's going to reach in there in his desk, and he's going to bring out the instruments that he is highlighting this time, and they're called the penny whistle.
Tin whistle, or the penny whistle.
Okay,
right.
Tell us about that.
Well, the tin whistle is an Irish instrument, and it's called that because originally it was made of tin. I have several examples here, two of which are made of brass, and the other is made of wood, but they're all the same instrument. The tin whistle, or the penny whistle, is an inexpensive instrument. It still is today. These are under $10, I believe. And this is a very high-pitched instrument, and it's true that with an instrument that's high-pitched, you really need to play it gently so as not to be shrill. And I'm going to play a song that all of you will recognize, especially around this patriotic holiday. And I'll talk about it after I play it. it wasn't so shrill, I'd take another round at that, but you get the idea. Yankee Doodle. Yankee Doodle was originally an English drinking song, and the English soldiers brought it in to the Americas, or to North America rather, and it became a favorite song, rewritten, the words rewritten by the Patriots, the American Patriots. So it went during the battles in the Revolutionary War, the English would be singing their song, the Americans would be singing their song, but both to the melody of Old Yankee Doodle. Now, this is the next step up. That's in the key of C. This is in the
D.
No,
I think
that's in the key of D. This is in the key, right? Is it written on there?
No, this says G on it. So.
Oh, gee, well, I'm wrong altogether. Anyway, this is a deeper note. And this was an instrument that was brought over by English sailors. They would, oh yeah, I'm flashing it over.
Yeah, you're kind of
out of the camera
screen
range.
There you go.
This was so portable that it'd be kept in a sailor's waistband or in their boot. And when they might have a break from running ropes up the halyard and drinking rum, they would pull out their penny whistle. And this is an Irish fiddle tune called Off to California Hornpipe. A hornpipe is a style of Irish fiddle tune. And here you have Off to California Hornpipe. Where that upper note is, there's that one.
Okay.
Now, this is handmade. No, actually, this is. I'll play this anyway. This is a wooden recorder made in Israel, and the recorder is very much like the penny whistle, but it has a full scale, and this even has half notes. And a wooden instrument is a little mellower sound. And this was bought at a garage sale by my uncle, who is now passed, but for me, knowing that I love to collect instruments. So this is a recorder.
What kind of wood is that?
That I don't know.
Okay.
It might say.
I'll look.
This one is made of pear wood. This is a handmade instrument, and it is a penny whistle or a tin whistle. In that means it's like a fife, although a fife is played like a transverse flute. This is blown, and you always get a note, like it's a whistle, like an ocarina. So the cut in the wood gives you that note, and then you play your song. Now, this is a song that I wrote. I used to be part of a bluegrass group called Palo Alto Sweat, rather. You can guess where it was, and you can guess what we did by the name. You see?
I see, yes.
And we would get together and drink Guinness beer and play instruments. I was playing guitar and harmonica, and we had a banjo player and a bass player and a fiddle player, and we made a lot of fun music. So this is a hornpipe that I wrote during that period called Sweat's Hornpipe.
what kind of wood was this? You knew that,
This
right?
is pear wood.
Pear wood. Oh,
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? And it's
very pretty.
handmade instrument.
The other one that you didn't know, it does say it was made in Israel. That's all I could find.
Yeah.
So, very beautiful. So, do you have any stories of where you've played your penny whistles?
Yeah, I was, there was a bar in Cleveland called, I don't remember the name of it, but an Irish bar that was in the original building that had been a bar since the 30s, and Elliot Ness, the G-Man, was shot at in that bar, and there are bullets still in the wall.
Wow.
And it was St. Patrick's Day, and I'd been on the road, and my ex-wife picked me up, and we went there, and I had my little ocarina, the last one that I played in the last show, and my penny whistle.
Ah.
I started to play that ocarina, and you can imagine a bar on St. Patrick's Day. It totally stopped. Complete silence. As I mentioned, there was a tree full of birds. Same thing happened. It's such a loud and startling sound. And I later played one of those penny whistles and played Irish fiddle tunes and had a couple beers bought for me. And yeah, that was a fun time.
Fun time, absolutely. Yeah. Very good.
Well, our show today has been about advocacy, and my gosh, we could talk on and on. Absolutely. I should interview you, Christy, about your life and education and all the good you did for your students and your parents. In fact, we'll schedule that. You're going to be,
that'll be fun.
In the chair.
Okay.
But for the time being, we can say this, that advocating for our own needs requires knowing the law, or what we're talking about in any regard, and being clear and coming at advocacy without anger or angst. If we come at any situation with love, with compassion for the person we're talking to, after all, they're the one taking the heat. They're the one that we're asking to make a change. And if we can approach, like I did Miss Kingzette, I knew what I wanted. It was very simple. Can you accommodate my test? Can I take it in a way that would test my education and not my eyes? If we know what we want, if we're reasonable, we might get our needs met, and we might not. If it doesn't work the first time, try again. If it doesn't work that time, try another way still. If you're righteous, if you have the right on your side, then keep at it. And as we've seen in these days when the voting rights of people with disabilities, and certainly African Americans, and certainly elders, have been rolled back and being crushed by this horrible state by state, monstrous, revisionist lawmaking. It doesn't matter if a law is on the books, it can be taken away. So we need to be vigilant and continually, as Stacey Abrams is showing us, find another way, keep at it. So for our own needs, it's one thing. For our group, for example, I might be advocating on behalf of people with visual disabilities, like Holland is advocating for people with physical disabilities, like Christy was advocating for students with educational disabilities. If we advocate with a group, we're going to have more strength. The group needs to be well educated about what the law is, what our rights are, what we're asking for. Always be clear in what you're asking for. And you get your needs met if everything is on your side.
Right. I just yesterday, if you recall, we had Ron Bassman as a guest a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And his organization called Mind Freedom had a webinar yesterday that I was able to watch half of it. And they were presenting different aspects of course, their cause. And yesterday's topic was getting out of institutions, not
deinstitutionalization,
right,
yes.
And going for a group
community
living.
Yes.
And one real young gal, she was from Washington, and I didn't realize this. She said today there is this big data collection problem among the disabled. Good data is not being collected. And so that's your basis for making a presentation to any governmental organization. So they were talking a lot about how that's kind of a starting point where we have to get better at collecting data from disabled situations.
Yes, and thinking creatively. I was advocating a number of years ago for a technology which we'll talk about in another show called remote infrared audible signs. And it has to do with orientation and wayfinding, which I believe is a civil right. We should have access to information about for as pedestrians, about intersections, about buses, about upcoming stops, about all of the things technology.
Especially with electric cars, because you can't hear them.
Exactly right. You can't hear them stop or begin. Anyway, so that technology, and I was saying, not only does this serve people with visual disabilities, it serves people who can't read signs.
For lots of reasons. I mean, you can have students that visually are fine, but they are not able to learn to read. It's very difficult.
There's a learning disability. It
Absolutely.
could be English as a second language. And I reckon that there were 46 million Americans that couldn't see or read signs.
And what year was that?
That was in 2005. We were successful I wrote an amendment to the highway bill, which we got funded, which funded a $3 million project in Seattle, which we'll talk about.
Right,
and
exactly.
Then in 2010, we came very close to having Washington, D.C. become the most accessible city in the world.
So are you going to talk about what's coming up next?
I am. Thank you for reminding me. Yikes. Next week, we are going to be having a fantastic, unusual, and unexpected guest who is going to be telling us about special orchestra, a man named Gare Linhart, who has invented a way of including people with cognitive disabilities in music programs that really is remarkable. So Gare Linhart, special orchestra on our next show. But for today, let's leave with this. If we know what we need, whether it be in relationships, whether it be in relation to a family, whether it be in relation to our government, whether it be in relation to employment, education, community integration, whatever it is, if we know what we need, we have an idea about how our needs could be met, and we organize so that we find a power base to bring our needs forward, then we can advocate and create change. As you saw from Holland De Lille, who was a member of that mighty cadre. I was involved, but I wasn't a member of the cadre that actually created the change through that 26-day sit-in. If we are able to accomplish the changes we desire, we find that we do increase peace, sweet peace. For the 4th of July, go out there and advocate for your freedom, for the beauty of the America that we all know and love. And if you're watching from another country, believe me, we're not xenophobic. We just say that we in America celebrate the freedoms that we have, and we advocate to make sure that we keep them.
Absolutely. And let us hear from you. We know we have many viewers, but we're not hearing from people. So go on Jeff's website, and there's a way to contact him, and let us know what you're thinking.
What you like.
Yeah, what you like.
You'd see like to see in upcoming shows.
Yeah, exactly. Give us some feedback.
And also, I would mention that we're going to be beginning to talk about this in our next show. Christy and I are paying for the show out of pocket, all the expenses connected with it, and it's unsustainable. So we're going to need to start talking about getting some support from the community. We know this is a value, and we have some things to give back.
Yes.
So we're going to have membership categories and all kinds of goodies too.
We'll share that next time.
Spread out next time. So until then, may all of you live advocating for yourself, those in your group and other groups. May justice prevail. And in that, may we all enjoy greater peace.
Peace, sweet peace.